Well, welcome to Tokens podcast, and delighted to be joined by Karsten Bruinsma. Have I got that right?
Yes.
Oh,
perfect.
And well, it's easy because I'm Jonny Fry, and FRY is super simple. And Mathieu
Perfect.
Cottin, yeah, your mum will be pleased.
Yes, good pronunciation.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm the roast beef, and we've got a Frenchman, and we got a Dutchman. But both of you have got a bit of an international slant. So Mathieu, you're currently hoping to be a Luxembourger.
I am, yes, hopefully in
you spent
the
some
next
time
years.
in Sweden, but you're obviously a Frenchman, so you've travelled around a little bit.
I did, yes. I have been, born and raised in France, as you mentioned, in the south of Paris, close to Versailles. After graduating, I moved to Mexico for about 4 years.
Oh,
That's
wow.
why I was asking. Where I met my wife, who is Swedish. So I did move to Stockholm, where I worked at the French embassy, which a position that I quit to start Tokeny with my best friend, Luc Falampin. And to do that, we moved to Luxembourg.
Fantastic.
7 years ago now. It's a long time.
Okay, so a real cocktail of different countries you've been in and lived in and what have you.
A few ones, yes.
Okay, and yourself, Karsten, you're born in Holland?
Born in Holland, more in the north of the Netherlands. Now for 7 years with CMS. Started my career here and mostly active in the digital asset world. Crypto asset service providers, we are assisting with their licenses. Tokenization projects.
But you had been in Latin America, you're telling us.
Yes. Last year I was part of the fintech team in Chile, in Santiago. It was really a great experience. And the digital asset laws there are a bit like the ones in Europe. So it's with my European experience, I could help there as well. It was really cool. And after that, 3 months of the CMS Mexico office in Mexico City, which is also really different, but also
Crazy place
and really
good fun.
Great experience. Yeah.
Okay. So the reason I actually wanted you just to sort of explain some of your sort of geographic sort of experiences is that we often get asked, well, is there a place that if you like tokenization is really taking place? Is there a centre that's really good at the digital asset space and the use of DLTs and blockchains? And I'd say, having been very actively involved in the market for 8, 9, coming up for 10 years, is the answer is no. It's actually very decentralised. We've got pockets of expertise here in Europe. There's some in America. There's some in Latin America. There's certainly some in Asia. And I think that's a great thing. So it's not like there's a Silicon Valley equivalent that, you've got to go to a certain country. We're actually learning from each other.
I would really align with that, yes, indeed, Johnny. I think it's a global effort that we are looking at the moment. We do have interest coming from all over the world. Obviously, there are different approaches, different strategies put in place, depending on where our clients are located. But we do see interest from all over the world for tokenizing assets on the blockchain, yes.
Okay, so for those listeners and viewers that are not familiar, CMS is obviously one of the leading law firms, and you've been very active. What are you seeing some of the things going on in Europe in terms of, we've got MiCAR regulations, its first anniversary coming up quite shortly?
Yeah, so MiCAR is by far the most interesting topic for lawyers. Last year it entered into force last year in June for part, and most of it in December last year. And there's now sort of a transitional regime between the former regime, more AML focused, and now to the more broader MiCAR regime. And it's a really interesting time to be a lawyer.
And what sort of, is there any particular, I know obviously you're here in Holland, but you've been, it seems to be the Dutch stealing a bit of a lead from what we can see. It seems to be quite accommodative, certainly for sort of non-Europeans to come to Holland to set up businesses and to get regulated. Yeah,
that's also what we see now. 2 weeks ago we had a CMS event in Zurich with all the crypto lawyers of CMS, and we were like comparing our jurisdictions, like who's going to be the new crypto hub in EU. And what we saw, Amsterdam is really like the Netherlands at the forefront. The AFM is really active in their communications from what they expect from market parties. They are not the easiest regulator, but they are very clear in what they expect. And we see that, also for example, the bigger parties market parties really appreciate that and start their hub in Amsterdam.
Brilliant. Okay. Mathieu, obviously you're not a lawyer.
Not
Unless
definitely
you're doing a
not.
bit of training overnight, didn't tell me.
My mom would love it, but I am not a lawyer.
So Mathieu, can you explain a bit about Tokeny? I know they've been around a little bit, but for people not familiar with the company, what do they do? Where are they based?
Yes, so Tokeny, we are a Luxembourgish company that we set up in 2017. So it's been 8 years now, long journey. And what we do is very easy. We are providing technological solutions to financial institutions who want to represent assets on the blockchain. So really have the full stack of tools that are needed to manage the issuance of this asset, onboarding of investors, management of the life cycles, and also to leverage secondary markets.
Okay, and what sort of jurisdictions are you sort of working in?
So the company is based in Luxembourg, but we do have clients all over the world, as I mentioned before.
We have clients on every continent.
We have clients on every single continent.
Wow.
We are very proud of it.
Yeah, fantastic.
We built a platform, a white label platform that we do not operate, that is operated by our clients, and that allows them to operate anywhere in the world to tokenize any type of assets, and also to target investors, any type of investors, and from any jurisdictions of their choice.
And what sort of assets? Can you give me some examples? Not clients, but give me examples of the sort of assets we're talking about.
So financial instruments, mostly debt instruments. We do have clients tokenizing equity.
We have the equity. It's more private equity.
Yes, private financial instruments. We have clients tokenizing commodities, money market funds, cash on chain. So really different type of assets. Yes.
Right, and the experience you're finding from a CMS point of view, is it a range of different assets people are interested in, or are they focusing on one particular area, would you say?
No, I think a range. We really now see a focus, also with the focus on stable coins. So it's a little bit different and different asset that's going to be tokenized, of course. But
so who wants to do stable coins? Are these big asset management firms or banks, or are they? I understand there's a few individual companies that want to create their own stablecoin for their supply chains. Is that something you're seeing a little bit of?
Yeah, as well. Yeah, and of course, Tether was the biggest stablecoin in the EU, and they left the EU after MiCAR entered into force. And you see now that a lot of companies try to get like a piece of the pie. But these are mostly like quite heavily regulated parties. You have one MiCAR compliant stablecoin issuer in the Netherlands as well, Quantos, and you see them all over Europe popping up now.
And are they euro denominated or
dollar,
or are they a little bit of both?
Yeah, mostly euro denominated, but you also have Circle in France. These have also outside of the EU have their equivalent stablecoin, but under MiCAR mostly we see euro or dollar. Yeah.
Great, and come back to you, Mathieu, in terms of the business has been going for a while, and we're now beginning to see regulations coming together. Obviously, be very interesting what happens with America, where they seem to be really pushing hard for tokenization, and indeed in the UK just recently, sort of end of April, beginning of May, we saw our Chancellor talking about they're all saying they want to be the digital hub of the world, but there seems to be more consensus. Europe's very much led the way with MiCAR, but we're seeing other jurisdictions looking like they don't want to be left behind.
Yeah, I have a different view on the topic here, because when it comes to MiCAR, I think it's perfect indeed. It clarified the context for cash tokenization on chain. It's also bringing some guidelines for utility tokens. But it does not help.
Hang on, what's a utility token?
A utility token is when you represent a service or a product on the blockchain. If you want to tokenize a table or a seat at the cinema, at the movies, that would be a utility token. But it does not...
Well, because you can have use of the table or use of the seat in the cinema.
It's basically something on which
you're not buying the table, you're having use of it.
Exactly, and it's something on which you would pay VAT if you were to buy it.
Okay.
But when it comes to financial instruments, in Europe it's still MiFID applying.
Yeah.
And our point of view at Tokeny for the last 8 years is that our clients do need to respect their legal obligation, which when you're tokenizing equity, debt, money market fund shares, it's MiFID applying, it's not MiCAR. And that's why we created a technological stack to make sure they would be able to enforce all their obligations. So you're perfectly correct, Jonny. We do see a lot of activity at the moment in the US following the election of Trump. But
So what sort of things are they interested in America then, in particular?
I think it's like a big green light to the market, sent to the market that yes, things are going to move forward. It's going to happen, and there is this FOMO effect, this fear of missing out effect that people want to have the tools to proceed and to operate on chain. We do see that with several of our clients who have been running only a proof of concept for the last 8 years and are finally about to move to production because they want to do things for real now. But yeah, I personally convinced that the regulation that we need is already in place. As long as you understand both the technological and the legal side of it, you can make it work. You can represent financial instrument on chain, and it's something we've done for 8 years already. So yeah,
They've been tried and tested, and hopefully sort out the wrinkles and the things that might get in the way.
There are things that can be improved. Cash on chain is really important because if you want to if you want to see the full benefit of the technology, you need to have both the security leg and the cash leg on the same ledger, on the same infrastructure. That's why MiCAR is so important. But MiCAR is not important to represent financial instrument on chain. It's important for what's going to come next.
Yeah, and I agree with that. There's been a lot of focus on tokenization of assets and actually not on tokenization of the payment mechanism. But if you're going to buy a digital asset, well, how are you going to pay the coupons, the dividends, the interest, i.e. those payments? You need to have some regulation. But you work quite closely with two tokens now, and the third cohort for the digital euro. So there's been a lot of talk because that's where I see one big difference. Europe's pushing quite hard on a digital euro. They just announced recently a cohort of up to 70 different companies that are on their digital euro project. In America, I know you're not American, but I know you're doing a lot of business in America. They've been very, very adamant. We are not going to have a central bank digital currency, US dollar denominated, and they've gone down the stablecoin route. A bit tricky doing stablecoins here in Europe because of capital adequacy and the restrictions on how much we hold in different banks. So do you see the digital euro from your perspective, Karsten, gaining traction?
You mean issued by like
European Central Bank?
Yeah. No, it's.
Or are we still a few years away?
I think we're still a few years away, to be honest.
So will you see private companies coming in and filling that gap and creating digital euros?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what's happening. And also DNB has been very active in their communication last few years about these stablecoins issued from government or the EU. But it's how it works with these insane big projects from governments. It takes way more time than the private.
And are you finding the DNB, because in the UK, certainly the Bank of England, are very active, that they want to be involved in events like today. We're holding a masterclass in your beautiful offices here in Amsterdam, and we've got DNB coming in and talking and presenting. Is that quite normal? Do they want to engage and listen and learn?
Yeah, that's what we see. Dutch Central Bank and also with the AFM.
Who's the AFM?
It's a Dutch Authority for Financial Markets. So they have the supervision on the investment firms and also on the crypto as a service provider and the MiCAR. Yep. But we were really surprised the last 1.5 years that they are very active in the communication. They have the knowledge. They attract really knowledgeable crypto employees. So I'm quite enthusiastic about it in the Netherlands.
Yeah. Well, that's encouraging because we need to work with the regulators.
Exactly.
But the regulators do need to work with the industry.
Yeah.
They can't just impose rules and regulations because it will stifle innovation, and then you will see other jurisdictions take over. But Mathieu, turning to you, I know we've known each other for a little while. Certainly known Tokeny when it first set up, and I think we were perhaps a little bit optimistic. We'd hoped by now we'd see greater traction. What do you think some of the challenges that have stopped that traction, and reasons why we don't have greater number and volume of tokenized assets?
Well, we mentioned one of the reasons, in my opinion, the fact that we did not have a recognized stablecoin in Europe was really a blocker to fully seize the benefit of this technology. We mentioned another one earlier before to start the podcast together. We spoke about valuation.
Can you explain that? Why is valuation a problem? We know, I can get a second-hand value for this microphone and for the cameras, and for perhaps I can go on eBay and sell my shirt.
If you need to take a step back, why are we tokenizing? Some people would say because it's going to automate everything, because it's going to operate 24/7, because it brings more efficiencies, decreasing operational costs. These are good arguments, but for me, it's not the main picture. One of the main arguments is to increase the liquidity of these assets. So to make sure that when people want to sell or buy, it can actually happen. And what's preventing this transaction today on private market? One, it's the lack of infrastructure. This is solved by the blockchain, but it's also the lack of data. You do need to have data about the asset you want to acquire to make sure you're buying it at the correct price. And that's why valuation is so important. That's where blockchain will help, because you can bring the data to the token holders directly or to the potential buyer much more easily than we do today, and much more frequently as well. Because for private market, valuation is usually done at the best twice a year, maybe on a quarterly basis. When this asset will be on blockchain, we will be able to improve this mechanism, and you will also have transparency on the previous transactions, giving you an idea of for what the asset has been sold for. Well, this is, I think, a missing part.
And I suppose sort of hand in glove with that goes, if you've got, take private debt or private equity, those assets are really, they're valued on a very much ad hoc basis. Yeah. But if you tokenize them and put them onto a platform, and then you see people buying and selling, hopefully, on a daily, but certainly on a weekly basis, then you've got a closer representation to what, because at the end of the day, a private company is what someone will pay for it. And that's what creates some sort of value. But if you've got that reference value, then hopefully then it will encourage other people to transact.
I think that's indeed, it will not solve the liquidity issue for our private instruments, but definitely it will help to bring a bit more trust regarding the price you're willing to put on the table to buy a specific asset. And to go back to your first question and complement that answer, what is retaining mass adoption is that so far we've only done the first step of what is needed. We've been representing assets on the blockchain, but when you ask our clients, why do you do that? Very few of the, in my view, right answers. Very few people really understand the long-term vision, and for me, the long-term vision is that you tokenize because you are standardizing the way you interact with value. You have a standard, and you make it easy for others to build third-party services on top of you. So you are unlocking the value of your assets. Concrete examples, maybe in 10 years from now, you will have a token representing a real estate asset here in Amsterdam, and in a matter of seconds, you will be able to drop this token on an application into collateral to unlock some value, because you need money to buy a car, maybe. Maybe in 10 years from now, you will connect your wallet in one click on another application, and you will get a tax report with the stamp of a Big Four. And I say 10 years from now, but these solutions already exist and are already used by some of our clients. It's just that in 10 years from now, it will be massively adopted, and people will not hesitate when they will invest in a specific financial instruments. If it's not tokenized, they know they won't have access to all these applications. So they will go for the tokenized format. That's where mass adoption will happen. And that's very similar to what we've seen with smartphones. Today, you would not buy a Nokia 3310. You want a smartphone because you have access to all these applications.
Yeah. No, and I remember, dare I say, people saying, "Oh well, this phone's got a camera." So, but I've got a camera. Why do I want a camera on my?
Exactly.
And now hardly anyone has cameras. Yeah. You've got it here, and you do. Take a picture, zoom, and off it goes.
Exactly.
But Karsten, what are you seeing? Some of the challenges, some of the reasons. Some of your clients are saying that perhaps adoption is not going as fast as some would like.
We have been together with to tokens. It's again a little bit under MiCAR, not under MiFID, but involved in the European regulatory sandbox with a concert tickets platform that use DLT technology to prevent fraud and copying of these tickets. And under the legal definition, under MiCAR, crypto assets is really broad, sort of a catch-all category. Certain projects that are not, in our view, intended to be covered by MiCAR are covered under the regulation and have to comply with it.
Right.
And together with Two Tokens and some other parties, we were in this sandbox to receive some guidance from the European regulator on this. Like, how do you see it, and do you have anything helpful to say about it? And we received some helpful information there, but I think there's really quite some unclarity still, because it's also a new regulation. So market parties would really need some more guidance on
So that's a good example of working with the regulator and saying, well, actually, perhaps what we've got is an unintended consequence. We didn't mean concert tickets necessarily caught like that. So we now need to think about how do we sort of redraft some of the legislation.
Yeah, exactly. And now some parties are in the uncertainty. Do I have to comply? The MiCAR regulation already applies in EU. What are the consequences for us? Do we need to start with this new business model? Yeah, so there's quite some uncertainty.
And you've got a symposium coming up end of June.
Yeah, correct.
Yourselves, you've got people like ABN AMRO and Rabo and Kraken talking about, see, like you're saying data, well, that's America, it should be data. And you're saying MiCAR, or it should be, I thought it was MiCAR, but you're...
MiCAR, yeah, that's...
Not MiCAR.
MiCAR regulation, so usually we say MiCAR.
MiCAR.
So
tell us a bit about the symposium that's coming up.
Yeah, there's a big event at the Rabobank in Utrecht, and it's about MiCAR 1 year down the road.
Right.
With a lot of big market parties, also the big banks, to discuss what are the developments that we see after 1 year of MiCAR. And that's, I think, really interesting to see that in the Netherlands these big parties come together and discuss these topics. Yeah,
brilliant. And what would you say the next 6-12 next year for Tokeny? What are some of the sort of, where do you think it's going to go? Is it still going to be very broadly on a global basis, or do you see more pockets? Do you think what's happening in America that's going to give added impetus to more tokenization there?
So I think the hot topic for the next 12 months is money market funds tokenization. That's definitely the hot topic for most of our strategic clients at the moment. But we do also see several proof of concept led to put asset into collateral. So I see it also as after tokenizing money market funds, it's a perfect asset to be put into collateral. So I see it as a logical next step. How fast it will go, I don't know, but these are the two.
I agree. I think money market funds, it's interesting to see in the UK, money market funds are about 50 billion, tiny. In Europe, they're about $750 billion. Globally, they're about $9 trillion. And actually, arguably, a money market fund is a much safer place to keep your money rather than a bank. You've got some of the best treasury managers, money market managers, looking after it, as opposed to just hoping that the bank will be all okay. Unfortunately, banks sometimes fall over. So I think money market funds, and I think going back to the regulatory, it's always interesting because I had 20 odd years as running a mutual fund company in the UK. And, you know, if you look at the current situation in money market funds, or in mutual funds, where a number of the listeners and viewers will have their pension funds or have their savings, you can deal once a day. The price is made by the asset management firm, and you can only deal, or get your dividends, get your income, if you're lucky, twice, once every 6 months. On the other hand, if you tokenize them, you can deal 24 days, 7 days a week. So you can do whenever you want to do it. It's normally priced by the market, but for those looking for income, instead of getting it twice a year, you can actually get it, in some cases, we're seeing once a week. So if you're an advisor going to your clients and saying, well, do you want to have this thing where you get your money every 6 months, or is this one gives you weekly? Do you want this one which gets priced internally, or this one actually priced externally? Do you actually only want to deal once a day, and particularly with money market funds? If it takes 3 or 4 days to get your money out, then you're probably going to leave it at the bank. But if you can get your money like that, then I think we could see money market funds take a lot of money out of the banks. But then where are the banks going to get the money to lend? because banks rely on fractional banking. So it's maybe careful what we wish for.
That's indeed a different topic.
Okay. Well, look, brilliant. Thank you both for joining me for this podcast. It's been really interesting. Be great to get some feedback. We'll have to get Two Tokens to a post MiCAR, the symposium during the end of June, because I think there's going to be some interesting findings that come out of that.
I think so. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Well, Karsten, thanks very much. And Mathieu, been really interesting. Nice to see you again. And great things are going well with
It was
Token.
my pleasure and always an honor to speak with you, Jonny.
That's great. Well, thank you for listening and watching the Two Tokens podcast, and we'll be back with another episode soon. Thank you.
That was it for today's podcast. Thank you for listening in, and please subscribe so you don't miss out on our upcoming episodes. If you want to get in touch with us, you can find our contact details at www.twotokens.org.